Heyo! Welcome to the Team SNG deck profile. Today we are going to be doing Melffy Brigade. Now this is quite a typical concept that people have talked about for a while. And it's basically just utilizing Ominous Shuriag's effect to banish and the Melffy monster's effect to just special summon themselves and spawn themselves onto the field. While I get your attention, I'd like to ask you guys, make sure you leave us a like, leave us a comment, and leave us a subscribe. Also keep your eye on that channel because we will be having our live stream in about 3 weeks. I haven't finalized the date just yet, but I'm kind of thinking of trying to line it up with Ancient Guardian's release date, as I would like to potentially be doing a box opening or two during the live stream. So definitely subscribe to us so you don't miss that. The idea behind this deck is to utilize Melffy's ability to spam the field, and to use Tri-Brigade's ability to link summon by using material in your graveyard. That all being said, let's just get into it. So starting off with our Melffys, all the main deck Melffys have the same effect, which is if a monster is normal or special summoned to your opponent's side of the field, or if that Melffy is targeted for attack, you can bounce it back to the hand and do something. Now that something changes with each monster, which we'll go through in just a second. They also all have the effect that they can special summon themselves from your hand during your end phase, meaning that they don't do a whole lot on your turn, but they do a whole heap and heck on your opponents. So the first of these Melffy monsters that we run is 3 copies of Melffy Puppy. Now Melffy Puppy is a really useful card, as when he bounces himself back to the field, he lets you special summon a Melffy from deck. Next we run 3 copies of Melffy Caddy. Caddy lets you search a Melffy from your deck and add it to your hand, and that can be really useful, especially if you've got a Melffy Fenny on board, as Melffy Fenny will then let you special summon one from your hand to the field. So they all spiral off each other. If you had a Caddy and a Fenny, and you left your Caddy on the field, and you left your Fenny on the field, the first time your opponent summons, you're going to bounce your Caddy, search out your Puppy, bounce your Fenny, search out, special summon your Puppy, and the next time your opponent summons, boom, you're going to bounce your Puppy, and there you go. You've special summoned from your deck a Melffy monster, or it could be any level 2 beast, as none of the Melffys lock you into Melffy specifically. They just lock you into level 2 beasts with their own effects. Finally, we do run one other Melffy, and that is Melffy Pony. Now this is just here for some recursion. He lets you add one back from the grave to the hand. So if you find yourself in a weird catch-22 where you don't have any Melffys in hand, but they're all in the grave and you'd like to get them back, Melffy Pony is definitely your answer for that. But we only run one because this doesn't come up too often. Onto the Tri-Brigade engine. Well, the Tri-Brigade engine is pretty standard. We're running our 3 Fractal, who's going to mill our 2 Kit, who's going to mill our 2 Nerval, who will then let us search out one of our 2 Karas. So this is a pretty standard engine. If you've looked at our Ancient Warriors deck profile, links down below, that utilizes the Tri-Brigade engine, this is the same engine I run in that. It's very simple. Basically, Fractal is a 1-card Ominous Shuriag, as you can go Fractal, mill your Kit, mill your Nerval, search out your Karas, and as long as you've got any monster in this deck to pitch, you pitch that and special your Karas. So it lets you get an Ominous Shuriag on board without using any of your normal summon, because Karas will then just banish off the 4 beasts, Beast Warrior, or Winged Beasts in grave, and boom, you're set. Now we do run a few other generic cards that are really useful in this deck specifically. First of these is 3 copies of Rescue Cat. Rescue Cat will let you get 2 of your Melffys on board, and you can then overlay them into the Melffys XYZ. It could potentially let you put Karas on board, but realistically, Karas with his effect negated does you no good. So you're typically going to use this to get yourself 2 Melffys and overlay or link off and keep climbing that way. But we also do run 2 Kalantosa, Mystical Beast of the Forest. Now Kalantosa is really interesting. If it's special summoned by a beast monster's effect, you get to target a card on the field and destroy it. So all of the Melffy monsters will trigger this, so you can basically bounce Puppy. If you have Ominous Shuriag on board, you special summon this, and then Ominous Shuriag will banish something, and then Kalantosa will pop something. So you're taking 2 monsters off your board for the price of 1, which is really good. That does it for our monster lineup. So onto our spell trap lineup. So we'll start off with our spells. We run 3 copies of Melffy Tag. Melffy Tag is a quick play monster reborn, so it lets us special summon from our graveyard any of our Melffy monsters. meaning that we can trigger Ominous Shuriag, but also potentially set ourselves up, so we don't necessarily feel too bad about linking off our Melffy stuff if we do have Melffy tag on the field or in our hand. We also have 2 copies of Melffy Hide and Seek. Now, Hide and Seek is a really good card, as it protects all your beast monsters from destruction by battle once per turn. But it also gives you some recursion in that you can shuffle 3 of your beast monsters from your graveyard back into your deck and draw a card. So it lets you fix your hand, and later on in a turn it lets you gain some advantage from stuff that you've potentially already linked off. The one downside to this is it does act a little counterintuitive to the Tri-Brigade engine, as typically Tri-Brigade wants your stuff in the grave. But at the end of the day, this isn't the end of the world, as your Tri-Brigade engine is quite powerful on its own, and you're going to likely be getting into some deeper plays with the Melffy stuff to control the board state further. Next we run 3 copies of Tri-Brigade Airborne Assault. Now, Airborne Assault is such a good card in this deck because it lets you get Melffy Puppy on board, and even though Puppy's effect is negated the turn it's been special summoned using this, that's not the end of the world, because if you use this at the end of your own turn and you have Ominous Shuriag on board, well, guess what? On the next turn, you're going to bounce your Melffy Puppy back, you're going to summon your Kalantosa, and that sets up your whole play using Melffy Puppy and Ominous Shuriag to remove 2 cards rather than 1. So that's fine with us that our effects are negated for the 1 turn, because, well, it doesn't matter. It's on their opponent's turn that this really does pay off. Now we do run some more generic support for the deck. First of these is 3 copies of Obedient Schooled. Obedient Schooled just lets us get 3 Melffys on board, or it could let us get Archetype on board as well. However, the monster's effects are negated, and they're destroyed at the end during the end phase. So realistically, we want stuff that we can either link off really quickly, or we can Xyz, which the Melffys will fully let us do. So Obedient Schooled is really useful for getting 3 Melffys on board, going into an Xyz, and then potentially later on the turn going into a link. And we also run 3 copies of Fire Formation Tenki. Now, the only Beast Warrior that we are running in the main deck is our Fractal. It means we're running 6 copies of Fractal, and that just lets us get all of our plays rolling, as Fractal is the 1 card Shuriag. So it's nice for us to have 6 copies of him, as it really does let us spiral off and continue to combo off later on in the turn. Finally, onto our trap. We only run 1, and that is 3 copies of Tri-Brigade Revolt. Now, Tri-Brigade Revolt's an interesting trap, and I don't see it played a whole lot, but I love it in this deck. Basically, what this lets you do is it lets you special summon Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast monsters from either your grave or banished, and then instantly link off into a link monster using them as material. So, if you've banished off a bunch of stuff, say potentially 3 monsters, using your Tri-Brigades, and then you've gone into your Shuriag, well, you can now use this to put a Rugal the Silver Sheller on the board, who will then potentially bring back something else from the graveyard. So, this is a really useful card just to put your opponents on their back foot. This is for our spell traps. Now onto our extra deck. First we're going to start off talking about the Melffy XYZ monsters, and the first of these that we're going to discuss is Melffy of the Forest. Melffy of the Forest is a Rota card, so basically you detach material from this and you add any Melffy to your hand. And that's any Melffy card, so you could search out the spells if you're looking for one of them, because you've already got the other cards in your hand that you necessarily need. The other thing this does is, if a Melffy monster that you control returns to your hand, you could target a face-up monster your opponent controls. It's not allowed to attack for this turn, and its effects are negated while it remains face-up on the field. So it basically turns off one of your opponent's monster's effect, so long as one of your Melffys returns to your hand, which they're typically going to be doing, seeing as that's the whole mechanic behind them. Next we've got Joyous Melffys. Now, Joyous Melffys is an interesting card. I only run it at 1 because it's less relevant than Melffy of the Forest, but what this lets you do is you can detach a card from this, and Melffy monsters you control can attack your opponent directly. Now, that's not a whole lot of damage, with this being the biggest Melffy we've got at 2,000 attack. But the real power that this card has is that, as a quick effect, you can target a Beast Xyz on your side of the field, and return it to the extra deck. In exchange, you get to special summon level 2 beast monsters equal to the number of materials that your returned Xyz monster had attached to it. So this lets you fuel your Melffy engine by bringing them all back from the grave. Finally, the big boss monster the Melffys have in Melffy Mommy. Now this is the win con of the Melffy deck. I don't like it as a win con very much, but I run 2 of it just because it's really fun to try and beat someone using its main strategy. Once returned as a quick effect, you can attach a beast monster on your side of the field or in your hand to Melffy Mommy as material, and she gains effects based on the number of materials she has. She requires 2+ level 2 beast monsters, but if she has 3 monsters attached to her as material, she can't be destroyed by battle. If she's got 4, you take no battle damage from battles involving her, and if she's got 5 or more, when an attack is declared involving her and a monster on your opponent's side of the field, you burn your opponent for that monster's attack. So it's easy enough to get her to 5 materials. It's simply a matter of obedience schooled, using 3 to go into her, using her effect on your turn to attach 1, and then on your opponent's turn to attach 1. So she becomes a big beat stick, but she isn't really protected from anything, which is a bit of a shame. So at the end of the day, Melffy Mommy's an interesting card, but I don't see her being the most viable card, especially when you think we've got the Tri-Brigades coming up next. Speaking of the Tri-Brigades, we run 2 copies of Farragut, which is basically just an extender for the deck. We run 2 copies of Tri-Brigade Rugal, the Silver Sheller, which basically recurs from the grave on our opponent's turn, so that will help us trigger off the big boss monster of Shuriag. And this is the main control card the deck has access to in the sense of banishing stuff off your opponent's field. So you combine this with the Melffy engine, which works at specially summoning stuff out onto the field. Well, now your opponent's in hot water due to the fact that they are going to be losing things left, right, and center. Coupling that with Melffy of the Forest negating stuff potentially, you're in really good shape. Well, on to the more generic cards that we run. Well, since we run a rank 2 engine, well, we're running a few other rank 2s in Armored Kappa, Gachi Gachi Gantensu, and number 64 Ronin Raccoon Sandayu. So, Ronin Raccoon Sandayu is probably the most useful of these, producing a token that is equal to the largest attack monster on the field, and that's yours or your opponent's, so it becomes something your opponent has to deal with. Also, he can't be destroyed by battle until he is the last beast monster on the field, making the Melffys good little bit of protection for him, and making him a real problem for your opponent potentially. Gachi Gachi Gantensu is basically just a giant booty that can sit on the board and stall you for a couple turns. Being able to protect himself, and Armored Kappa as well is just another one of those defensive cards that you don't really go into very often, but is nice to have as an option. Finally, we do run the Xyz based Link in Bujinki Ashashima. Now, this card, I kind of like it, but I also kind of don't. The fact it can't be used as Link material does really hurt my opinion of this card. But its ability to get you any of the Melffy Xyz monsters onto the field almost for free is kind of nice to see. Also, the nice thing about it is a Beast Warrior, so you can use the Tri-Brigade engine to summon it out. So that is a nice sort of interaction the deck has access to, but typically I don't go into this as I'm too busy going into the Tri-Brigade engine, and I'd like to be able to link stuff off. That does it for the extra deck. At the end of the day, do I think this is a national or regional topping deck? Probably not, but it can definitely throw some opponents for a loop if they don't know how to play around the Melffy's ability to bring themselves back to your hands and spam the field. That couples really well with the Tri-Brigade engine, which aims to just turbo out its big boss monster in Ominous Shuriag. Now, Ominous Shuriag gains the ability to banish something off of your opponent's field if, at any point, a Beast Warrior or Wing Beast is summoned to your field. And, well, the Tri-Brigades are going to do that on your opponent's turn whenever they summon a monster, as they will bounce themselves back, and most of them will put a body on board, whether it be your Fenny or it be your puppy. These shenanigans are further fueled by the Melffy XYZ that let you negate cards on your opponent's side of the field, or put more Melffys onto the field that your opponent's going to have to deal with. And when you combine that with cards like Calentosa that take stuff off your opponent's board whenever it's summoned by a beast monster's effect, well, now your opponent's really in hot water. And the fact that the whole thing can be spammed out using a single card in Obedient Schooled is really nice. Obedient School gets you 3 Melffys, links Xyz into Melffy of the Forest. Melffy of the Forest detaches one to search a fourth Melffy that you could then normal summon, and you can then go into either an Xyz or another link play or whatever it is that you need just to get your combo going. So Obedient Schooled, not limiting you in what you do with the materials you put on the board, really does give this deck the turbo ability to give your opponent the nightmares. That all being said, I'd like to thank you guys for watching. Make sure you leave us a like, leave us a comment, leave us a subscribe, and definitely make sure you hit that bell because I don't want any of you missing the 24-hour live stream in about 3 weeks' time. I will have a firm date for you as soon as I can. I'm hoping to have one set up in the next 2 weeks. So, till then, make sure you keep your eyes on the channel, and I'll see you guys at the next video.